options, to cut off, to remove. So that's what we're doing when we're deciding is, we're removing a group of options to us.
Right.
How many times have you sat down to make a beat and just the vastness of splice and your snare drum folder is overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know,
Every day, every time I log
you
into it.
sit down and it's just like rolling through, and you're like, which way is up?
Uh-huh.
And so the creativity in that situation is selecting which snare to roll with, where to start, and just getting in there and deciding like, I want this, I want that, I like the way that sounds.
Yeah.
And on that level, creativity moves throughout your entire life every day, from which banana you pull off the stalk to what socks you want to wear,
Right.
to what radio station you put on when you're driving to work. All that's really creativity. And it's interesting to hear people talk about how they're not creative, or they don't they're not able to be creative right now. And it really kind of breaks down to you just need to get in there and start choosing.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
I love that. Even just the simple fact of what you chose to wear today.
Yeah.
Just my clothes that I decided to put. Why did I put my Converse on today
Right.
versus my slides? But that's creativity.
It's how you choose to express yourself, but it all comes down to decision making, like what's your favorite shirt? Why is it your favorite shirt?
Right.
It's creativity, it's how you choose to set yourself apart from others and stuff, but on a musical standpoint, when it comes to creating music, I think that a lot of people get in their own way, and just getting in there and starting to work and just picking one thing, putting one kick down, put some hi-hats in between the kicks, put a clap somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and you got something to work with. I feel like we as humans are better editors than we are generators,
I totally agree.
As long as you got something, then, you can kind of get going and start moving it around.
Right.
I think a lot of people think of making beats as like I came up with this crazy idea, and then I put it onto the paper. I conceptualized this.
I've always wondered about that. Like people who say, I got this beat in my head and I put it down.
Yeah.
I've always kind of envied that because I've never really
never
had
had
it.
that.
I've never had it. I've just kind of sat down at the blank canvas and just started plugging away. And then just like you said, once you start putting down some on the canvas, the roadmap kind of just appears
Absolutely.
out of nowhere.
It's more like we're sculptors more than we are creators.
Mm-hmm.
You get the slab of clay and you start moving it around.
Uh-huh.
You start working on it. But I mean, I started making beats on computers in 1997.
Okay.
I got Fruity Loops too, and I'm officially out of ideas. I don't sit in the shower and just like, oh, that's a good one anymore. So I have to trick myself into being creative and kind of like exercise that like a muscle, and figure out how to be creative in any moment.
Can you just elaborate on that? You say you trick
Absolutely.
yourself. How do you trick yourself?
I would say really the trick is what your mind is playing on you, kind of the stress of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times when there's big consequences to what you're doing, it's hard to be creative. When this song has to be a banger, when this song has to get me shows, you already lost the ball.
Right.
When you're down that road of thinking, you're thinking way too much. And you hear a lot of producers talk about it. They turn their brain off. Their eyes roll back in their head. It's like Goku in the gravity chamber. Like the best song I ever wrote, it was just 2 hours. I don't even know. I like blacked out and just woke up and it was there. The flow,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I also think like mistakes too. Like sometimes
Absolutely.
I
I can't tell you how many times I've pasted on the wrong channel.
Yo.
And it sounds sick.
Or yeah, paste it or just, copy down some MIDI, a lead.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the day I copied down a lead synth line down to my bass line patch.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
Oh.
oh my God, I want to do this every time now.
Totally. The hard part of that is being open to it. And I think if you have too much of a concept in your mind and you think you know what the song is going to be, and you do a mistake like that, but you're not open to it, you're like, oh, that's wrong, I have to fix it.
Right.
But it's about being open to what the universe throws at you in that situation, and the happy accidents. That's what leads to those oh shit, break your neck moments where like this I feel like this song didn't even come from me. Like it's a gift.
Right. I'm getting chills right now because I resonate with that, because sometimes I feel like it's really not me creating. It's just I'm the medium for that energy.
Man, the Romans talked about that. All kinds of people talk about it. Like the creativity is kind of like a ghost that possesses you. Like you're more like a courtroom stenographer.
Uh-huh.
You know, where you hear something in your head, you kind of put it down under the beat, but like, where does that come from?
Right.
You
right.
know?
And I'm a firm believer, like, if you don't do it, like, somebody else will.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to honor my creativity when I have it,
Yeah.
or leave it alone when it's not there.
Absolutely. And if you are not able to be creative, you need to seek out things that make you creative. You know, I think David Lynch, the director, talks about this a lot. He's like, who knows where creativity comes from? You could be walking down the street and see a flash in a puddle, and bam,
Right.
there it is, idea in your head. He says it's like there's someone in another room flipping him like one scene of the film at a time. And at first it doesn't make sense, but eventually, once you start stringing them together, it starts to make sense.
Right.
And he says, you know, if you're feeling uncreative, if you're in a place where creativity is not happening for you, then you need to leave and seek it.
Right.
You need to go find inspiration. And I think that is a huge kind of missing key for people in nowadays, where a lot of times 100% of the work they do is in a windowless room.
Right.
You know,
or they feel like they have to lock themselves in the studio to get that album done, when you could go right outside, set up your microphone right in the backyard, and actually cook up something and make something great. Literally just going somewhere else to seek it.
How many people do you see on Instagram like get an Airbnb in Joshua Tree with their monitors
all the time?
You know, and it's not an acoustically treated environment.
Right.
It's not a studio, but the vibes are there.
Right.
You know, and that's more important to them.
Right. Not to give this man any more clout, but I'm thinking of the Kanye West video that resurfaced, and you know, he's sitting around 20 people recording his verse.
Yeah.
And you know, that's unheard of in a studio session, where it's like it has to be isolated. You have to be in the booth. You know, it's just the engineer and the artist. But you know, he's sitting around 20 different people, and I just think that's amazingly creative.
Same with Future. I saw videos of him. He's just at the SSL with Seth Ferkins, like, just spitting it right there.
Yep.
You know, like just hanging out. You know?
I love sessions like that. I hate the booth. I love sitting right with the artist.
Absolutely.
And just that connection factor.
It's like a song is like a photograph of a feeling or something, and you know, and you can be in that room, in that feeling. It's a better translation. Otherwise, you're like, trying to remember what the feeling was, or trying to latch back onto that. But you know, staying in that energy and doing it all there, you know, it's very important, I think.
So I got to ask you,
yeah,
when you were lacking creativity and you had to go seek it, can you remember a time when, or just recently, what you like? Just something that you did abstract, like I need to go seek out creativity. What did that look like for you?
I'm a big museum attender.
Oh, okay.
My fiance works at a museum, and so we get into a lot of LA museums for free.
Nice.
And I was struggling with this in the last couple of years, honestly. I kind of stopped getting inspired by music as much as I used to. You know, like my whole life, listening to music makes me want to make music.
Right.
You know, but I was just getting a little burnt on that. So I found that like other mediums of art have really been inspiring to me in like an indirect kind of way, more so than that's a painting of a tree. I want to make a tree song.
Right.
You know, but the shading, all of this, the thought, the expression that goes into that, I find it very inspiring. And like I was at Norton Simon in Pasadena, we were looking at Rembrandts from 1492.
Wow.
And I was thinking about how these dudes from hundreds of years ago had the same creative struggles that I do.
Right. Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And like that kind of connectivity of like he didn't have the internet. He didn't have any of the tools that I have to find out more about this. And these people kind of found that creativity within themselves.
Right.
You know?
It just makes it's like, okay, what am I?
Yeah.
It gives you a boost, right? That would give me a boost.
Absolutely.
Like why am I thinking about it so much? Like, look at this.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking. They were just doing.
No, and they were doing art, you know. I think a lot of times people kind of remove music from art. But I try to view myself as a painter or a sculptor more than I am a generator of songs.
Right.
You know?
I definitely think of music as art as well, like a painter as well. You know, I for once I've tried to see, you know, music as in colors, you know, as you see like applied colors to sounds. Like I tried to do that once. And it actually worked. You got to think about it just in different ways, different forms, different mediums, right?
And it's whatever it takes to catch a wave. You know, and it's going to be
Right.
different day to day. It's going to be different month to month. It's going to be different year to year. But whatever sparks that one idea that floats into your head, you might want to chase that a little bit and see. Is it, you know, is it going on hikes to beautiful places? Is it looking at art throughout history in different ways? You know, photography, all that. You know, there's so many different. It's very interesting. Like recently, I've been getting a little bit more into the visual arts, and
Yeah.
there's saturators and filters
Yeah.
and a lot of the same terminology that goes into that.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's interesting. Like, is a black and white photo, is that like a mono mix? Like, you know,
Mm.
there's so many correlations, and you can just draw the lines right there and seek inspiration from that.
Right, right. And I'm thinking about mixing too, just down
Totally.
that art form.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody else the other day that, you know, they talk about mixing like it's a science project or it's a task. Like, no, actually mixing is an art.
It's creative too.
It's so creative, but you have to set it up
Yeah.
to be creative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you have any stories or experiences about facing creativity head on?
Oh man.
Come on, I know you do.
So many.
I know
so
you do.
many.
Come on, give it to us.
Yeah, I've got a couple, honestly. I remember one of the first times I really got hired to go to writing sessions. It was in New York.
Okay.
I was working on an album for another artist, and it was the first time I had been flown somewhere and put up in an Airbnb. And Monday
Nice.
at noon is when the studio time starts.
That must have felt so inspiring.
Man, it's crazy because
I made it.
I was broke at the same time too,
Uh-huh.
you know, so dealing with all that. But it's interesting when you sit down in a room, the clock is ticking, you're getting paid. Write me some songs. It's
The
a lot.
pressure-
It's a pressure. It's a
the
lot of
pressure
pressure.
is
you know,
on,
it's a
baby.
lot of pressure,
Uh-huh.
and it was weeks of this, you know. So there were days when I would pull up to the session and, you know, not feel as creative as I might have the day before or something like that. But I kind of locked into that decision-making process where I always thought like, well, let's just get in there and fuck around.
Right.
Let's just get in there, lay some drums down, and just see what happens.
Right.
And just ride that wave, you know. And I always found a way out, you know.
Mhm.
I always turned it into something just basically by getting in there and starting to work.
Right.
You know? And just do something. Put anything down. Grab something that makes you feel something and just start editing and manipulating, layering, duplicating, stretching out, you know, just get in there and do something. And before you really realize that you're working, you look up and you've got a loop,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah, and I can totally agree. And I used to be really nervous, like sessions like that. Like I have a
Yeah.
session, I just would be just a little bit nervous. Like I wonder if I'm gonna be able to just like put something down, or I'm gonna make something creative, or I'm gonna make a piece of art that resonates
Yeah.
with the person that's in the studio.
Totally.
And I would always kind of psych myself out, but same thing. Always put that kick down, put that kick snare, get a bounce going,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, I like that. This is cool. Maybe we go there, and then just like
as
that.
long as you got something to roll with. And it's wild because you know, similarly, I had an office hour here at Icon for a while called From the Ground Up.
Okay.
Where I would straight up start a song blank slate every week in front of students.
Okay.
So you show up at the on the hour, I open Ableton, it's empty.
Blank canvas.
We make a beat every week for years. I did this for years, man.
Wow.
And
From the ground up. That's
from
a
the
good
ground
idea.
up.
Yeah.
I had
I like
I had a pretty good success rate, I would say. You know, percentage wise, I would say, you know, 2 or 3 out of 10 would really be like heaters like that I ended up releasing.
Okay.
Like I have
That's awesome.
so many songs that came from that. But after a while, you know, going into a situation like that with fear, your beat kind of sounds like you're scared,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, well, the way you're feeling goes into your song. If you're clicking Ableton and you're like, oh shit, here we go again, it's not going to be good, you know? It's not going to be good. And honestly, I lock onto that now where like when I have the good feeling when I hover over Ableton, I know it's going to be a banger. But the confidence that built in me, knowing that week in, week out for years, I could sit down and make a beat no matter what, I started to internalize that.
Hmm.
And so then after that, I move into a writing session, and what I'm feeling is confidence,
Right.
you know, instead of fear. And that changes the way things sound.
Straight up.
That's the Kanye shit of like, I am God, you know, like I got this, you know? And I like, you know, that really freaked people out when he said all that. And I was like, on some level, I understand that he's just unbridled confidence.
Right. And it's not crazy.
No, in a creative situation, that's good. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because he's not second guessing
like,
a thing.
I got this. It's gonna happen no matter what. Like, we're just playing.
This kick works. This snare works. This is because I'm feeling it, and that's what I'm putting down, and I'm gonna explore.
Absolutely. And you know, when I realized week in, week out, year in, year out, I can do it. I realized that the writer's block, it's just in your head. You know, it's a purely fabricated thing. You know. It's wild. We could get deeper into that later, but
we're definitely going to get into writer's block for sure. Maybe today, just a little bit, but absolutely next week.
Yes, absolutely.
Chat, I want to get some more love to the chat. Chat, what are some uncommon ways you find yourself being creative? You just heard Petey talk about some unconventional ways, how he gets creative, looking at museums, looking at art, just having that mindset. What are some uncommon ways, again, you find yourself being creative? Go ahead and type some responses in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, go ahead and feed the chat too, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interactive going on between there too, and I want to be able to tap in and see that too. So make sure, just because you're not in the Zoom, doesn't mean you can't participate, because we are seeing all of this, and so we want to make sure that we get to everybody as much as we can.
Roy says he goes on a drive.
He goes on a drive,
like
back
that.
roads, out in nature. Okay, that's great. Yep, I absolutely find a lot of my songwriting gaps in the car.
Oh, me too. But that's where my kind of that is where I'm able to listen to my own music from another perspective.
And that's so important.
As the listener, you know? Because, I mean, I think it's something that has to do with, like, the way we're not looking at the DAW when we're listening. You're driving, you know? You're driving. You're not looking at
You're not looking at faders. You're not trying to do anything. You've got completely cut off your ability, right?
I teach my students to do this, too. Like, when we reach the mixing stage, like, at some point I get them to turn their screen off. I feel like your brain anticipates that blue block that's coming up on the playhead. You know, you see the change coming and you're already thinking about something else. But I feel like when you're driving and listening in that kind of setting, you're able to really hear the song for what it is.
Correct.
And be like, yo, something needs to switch in the 16, like it's getting boring. Like, you can kind of feel it more because you don't have that visual information to kind of take your attention away from you.
Right. And fill in the gaps.
Yeah. The driving's super important, I think.
And that's like the most medium. That's the most listened to it, right? Oh, I got a bunch of stuff in the chat now.
Some answers now.
Hey, so travel is always a big inspiration for me. Travel for me too. Absolutely. Get on a plane and immediately start hearing music in my head. Maybe like the hum of the engines is like a meditation.
Oh man.
Woo! Gas
I
right
can talk
there.
about I'm so inspired by hydraulic sounds in the wings.
Yeah.
Like, I love making sounds like that with FM synth. I think it comes from all the travel days.
You have to teach me some of those.
Oh, that's easy. We just get some sine waves out. But honestly, like that was a huge breakthrough for me as an artist. When I first started touring, I kind of like had my studio set up at my house, and I would get opportunities, and I would be like, man, I need to get home to my studio to work on this. Like, I got to get home to work on this. I can't do this on the road. And at a certain point, I was so busy that I just had to.
Right.
I remember that first beat I made at the gate, like waiting to fly to a show.
Yeah.
And it was fire.
Yeah.
But I think mostly because I was able to channel that travel inspiration directly in. You know, it was like the purest form of inspiration because I was feeling it in that moment.
Right.
You know, I was in between shows at the gate, and I was flying I think I was flying from Seattle to Austin, Texas to play at Barcelona Bar.
Nice.
And it's a classic old bar, but I remember making a banger there and then playing it that night.
Yo,
and it was electric,
That's the life, man.
Yeah, man.
And to get a response too, that was probably great. It probably just felt phenomenal.
It went off, and that was a really like key unlock. Like, that feeling is honestly something I continue to chase. Of like, you know, I made this today, inspired by traveling. I'm playing it tonight, and it worked. It's like there's no middleman there.
Right.
You know, just pure inspiration right into the song.
No second guessing, just went right there. I definitely have a story too. Airplane.
Mhm.
Definitely one of my bigger records, as far as like stream and numbers go.
Yeah.
Beat was absolutely made on the plane.
Yeah.
Artist sent me the acapella right before
Mhm.
I took off, and I was like, you know what, this is fire. Let me and I just popped it open. Wanted to watch a movie. I was tired, but I was like, you know what, let me just
Let me
pop
just
it in.
let me
Started
just
messing with this bass line,
Yep.
and before you know it, by the end of the flight, 2 hour, couple hour flight, I had something, and
Yeah.
it came out, and it actually did very well.
You mentioned you were tired. I think there's something about being tired. I think the good ideas come out when you're tired.
Is that why people get creative in the evening
I
time?
think so. A lot of artists talk about it when they're exhausted and sleep deprived. I think a lot of it comes down to like when you're trying to make a sick beat, you can't. But when you're just doing your thing, it comes out.
You're
Like,
right. I agree.
it comes down to intention. And I think a lot of times when you're too tired to think about what you're doing, or I found that like if I have people over at my house, if I'm having a little party and I'm messing around, the more distracted I am and the more my autopilot kind of makes the beat, the better it is.
Right. Myra says the state between sleep awake is magical for songwriting.
Yes.
Only if you can remember it and write it down. I have so many like good ideas in my half sleep, but then I tell myself in my sleep I'm gonna remember it, and then when I wake up I don't remember it. But I absolutely agree with that. Um, Ashley says driving without music is where I always get a lot of ideas. Or at
Yep.
concerts, I rework song lyrics I have in my head to the beat of other people's tracks.
That's huge. I get the ideas in the shower too.
I was gonna say
You
that.
know,
Yep.
where you kind of have nothing to occupy your brain. You're doing some automatic task you do every day, like driving or something like that. And I almost feel like you're inviting inspiration in that moment.
Just because
Because your
you're
mind is not occupied with anything.
right. Right.
It's almost like observing silence or meditating or something like that. Because your brain's always going. But I think that giving yourself some room to hear your inspiration, because it's quiet a lot of the time,
Mhm.
and it's like a muscle you can kind of flex and learn to hear better. But a lot of times it gets drowned out by all your thoughts of like, oh man, I can't do this.
Yep.
This sucks.
And all the bleeps and
Yeah,
phones and
yeah.
notifications and
All
all
the
that.
news channels and all the stuff. But yeah, there's something about being distracted, having to do this thing you do every day that doesn't take much thought power. So your active body is doing that, but then your mind wanders.
I don't know about you, but see how I feel like we put creativity so high on a pedestal when it's actually, again, just so simple.
Yeah.
And it's really just a blissful
Yeah.
thing that's a part of all of us. And why stress on it?
Get out of your own way.
Get out of your own stinking way.
Get out of your own way.
So we also talk about the evolving artist
Yeah.
at Icon Collective, and it's a
Yes,
big
yes.
part of the artist mindset and what we believe in, and how to obviously become iconic and finish legendary. So, Petey,
Yes.
how do you describe the concept of the evolving artist?
This is a big one, and this is honestly something periodically throughout my career I've kind of had to hone in on. But basically, the only constant in this situation is change.
Mm.
The only thing you can really count on is that you're going to change as a person and an artist.
I know that's right.
Yeah. I always think about Metallica when they cut their hair off and started making rock music. I always
Yes.
think about when Scream stopped making dubstep and went over to disco.
Mm.
There's so many changes in people as artists, and that can be, accepted by the your audience or not. But that is one thing that you could really count on. And I think that the minute you really feel like you know everything and you've learned everything is when you stop growing as an artist.
Say that again for everybody watching, because you can fall into that trap
Yeah.
really easy, especially if you get a song that does very well.
Yeah.
I definitely fell into that trap
You
before.
think you know everything, it'll stop you from growing. And some of the greats that I've worked with, like people way larger than me that I really thought would have egos and attitudes, have been really interested in what I was doing.
Hmm.
Even these people that are millionaires off their craft were interested in my process. And I think a lot of that comes back to that beginner's mindset
Hmm.
where they want to grow still.
Right.
They know that the next album is going to be from me learning something new,
Right.
you know, and seeking out people that are doing things in interesting ways and learning that, collaborating. I've learned so much more from sitting down with someone and making beats with them, my mentees, all these collaborative situations throughout the years than I ever did on YouTube or anything like that.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I was playing songs. I was playing songs today, PD, and it was just like, yeah, me and my student made this. Me and my student, me and my mentee this. And it was just like phenomenal work. And I'm playing my stuff that I made by myself. And I'm like, hold on. Like,
Yeah.
I'm evolving
Yeah, totally.
just by sitting with people who are looking up to me for advice, but at the same
Absolutely.
time, I'm pulling from them.
Absolutely.
And I'm gaining. I hit you the other day, right? What I say? Can you enroll me in a
And
synthesis one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just need to get my sound design, back
Absolutely.
going. So even though I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
I still always need to come back to the basics.
Totally.
Always need to rework that engine, re-grease them hubcaps. You know what I mean?
And you can get inspiration from that, you know, like learning deeply how synthesis works. You're like, oh, so that's why that thing I do does that. Maybe I should do it a little bit. Maybe I should try this now that I know what's actually happening.
Right.
You know, and it opens these doors to being inspired in different ways as well. You know, when I for the longest time, I did not know synthesis. Honestly, when Chevy asked me if I wanted to teach synthesis, I said, I don't know that, you know? And now I'm one of the, like, I love teaching synthesis now. But I just didn't think I knew it that well. And I had to train on the class and get it down really well so that I was able to speak it and stuff. But
Right.
but after that, after my deep knowledge of synthesis grew, I would find myself in the club being inspired by envelope shapes and LFO automations and things in entirely different ways where I'm not like, oh yeah, man, that sounds cool. I want to use that sound. I'm like, that piece of that sound is cool. What if I did that with a totally different sound? What if I did that with saws instead of squares? What would that sound like?
Right.
And that's a whole nother layer of inspiration right there.
Your scope totally
It's
just
the micro.
Yeah.
It gets in there, you know?
right.
And it's crazy because like we start to learn about synthesis and you hear a sound in the club and you're like, I can make that. I just off rip, I know exactly how that was made.
That would be so. I need to get there.
Yeah, it's not
I
hard.
need to get. I'm not there yet, but I know like identify. I know I could identify, but yeah, to hear the anatomy or to break down the anatomy of a
Yeah,
sound
totally.
by hearing it, is an incredible ability that I want to have.
We teach you the whole process in Synth 1. It's basically, you know, we break down the sound into different elements. We analyze what each one does. But after a while, you realize with synthesis, like, there's only so many options,
Yeah.
you know? So everything's built of these couple building blocks. So if you try enough different things, you'll get there.
I know,
You know,
and I'm trying one day at a time. I told myself kind of like how I show up every day just in my DAW and try to write a chord progression.
Yeah.
I try to make a new sound.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
one a day. Just try to catch a flow there and just turn knobs.
One a day is huge.
One a day.
No days off.
Do you agree with the statement? That if you take a day off, you take a step back.
No, I don't. Because
Okay.
I took more than one day off before. Not at all.
Okay.
And honestly, sometimes you need it, man. Like,
I agree.
yeah, sometimes you need it. But I think that it is kind of your obligation as an artist is to try every day.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Is taking a break from something creative?
You can, via taking a break, you can invite inspiration back into your life if you've been devoid of it.
Right.
There comes a time where a break is necessary. This is not something you can grind through. You cannot grind inspiration into your life.
Right. Because I intentionally walk away from stuff in hopes or kind of like I know if I walk away from this,
Yeah.
my creativity is going to come back or it's going to have a new life to it when I step back into it.
This is the manometer analogy. Are
Okay.
you a video gamer?
Yes, I am.
You know, like Final Fantasy, you get the wizard and they got the mana points.
Okay. Yes.
You know, if you're at 0 mana and you keep casting fireball every time you get 5, you know, you're never going to have enough mana for your bigger spells.
Right.
Sometimes it's worth letting the mana meter go back to 100.
100. So
Cast
you
that
can
big spell.
bang.
Yeah. But if you're just every time you get a drip of it, you're sending it, you know, that's diminishing returns sometimes.
Right.
You know?
I'm thinking of Elixir in Clash Royale.
Yeah, man. Yeah, straight up. You get the green herbs in Resident Evil. You got to heal yourself, you know? Like, yeah. But recharging is huge, you know? It's absolutely huge. Like, just for instance, this will prove it to you. How many times you've come back from a vacation like, yo, I cannot wait to get in there.
Straight
I
up.
just feel it coming out of my fingers.
Every time I go.
Yeah. And so, like, chase that. Instead of being like, man, I need to learn more about my mix down and compressors, it's like, I need to experience more things that are going to inspire me, you know?
I love that. I love that. If you can agree with that, put some flame emojis. Type
right.
icon in the chat.
That's
Hashtag icon.
That's
if you
right.
agree with anything me and Petey are talking about today, or if this is resonating with you, type hashtag icon in the chat. Or a fire emoji, anything. Let us know that you're listening and you're with us. We got 10 more weeks of this loveliness. Let's go back to the evolving artist, Petey.
Yes.
I want to know your evolution of DAWs. I just want to know now.
Wow.
You said you started in FL.
Started in FL way back in the day, and then my death metal band was recording with a guy named Adam Baber, and this was mid 2000s when everybody would throw the electronic intro on their album, you know.
Okay.
And he was using Reason.
That's what I started on.
Yeah. And so I saw the bouncing cables, and I was like, I get this, you know. I got
tab
Reason.
button for the back.
And like I can sidechain by routing into this compressor, and I was like, cool, because I come from band world, you know.
Mhm.
So I was like, I get this, you know. Fruity Loops was just like it had drums already in it, so I was just messing around making rap beats and stuff. But I understood what was going on in Reason, and then I remember one day, basically in Reason, we had Recycle.
Mhm.
You know, we
I
had to
remember Recycle.
chop it up in another program.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw somebody drag a drum break just right into Ableton, and that was in it. In the arrangement view from a Finder, you know, just like, and then it started, and I was like, I'm never using Reason again.
Yeah?
You know? Yeah, like that's what kind of moved me over. I think it was Ableton 5.
Ooh.
Way back. But yeah, I've been on Ableton ever since. Honestly, I've over a decade, you know, experience. Like I've converted so many people, DJ friends of mine, over to Ableton. Like I should work for them, honestly. Man. I'm that deep in it. Like
That's what's up.
Yeah.
I went from Reason to Cubase
oh
to Logic. To Pro Tools
Pro Tools.
and Ableton. So I'd say I'm still Pro Tools, Ableton, but yeah, I went through like 4 different DAWs before I
Yeah.
landed on the DAW of choice where I was like, everything is like together. But yeah.
the thing is though, man, like they're all the same. It's just a canvas, you know.
Yeah.
I'm interested in Bitwig. I know people that use other things. Some of my favorite albums are made in GarageBand. You know, it doesn't really matter.
I know.
You is what matters.
Was
you
it
know?
Lady Gaga's whole album produced with Apple Loops?
Probably.
I think so, like all in Logic, like stock
Yeah.
loops. A lot of them were.
A lot of people say the first Justice album was done in GarageBand.
I believe it.
But
I
you know,
mean,
if you're just recording your guitars and your drum machines anyway, it's like you could do. And that's my dude. There was this interview with Madlib a couple years ago, and the interviewer is, you can tell the interview is one of those interviewers that kind of wants to put himself on a little bit, and so he's trying to impress Madlib with what equipment he uses, and he's like, "Yo, Madlib, like, what are you on these days?" And he's like, "Last couple years, I've been on the iPad." And that was it. And
he
I
was like,
what? Well, like that just goes to show you. And like, I promise you, Madlib is really making beats on an iPad.
hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah, and it's the sample and the idea more so than it is any compressor you put on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the core of the idea.
Right.
So it doesn't. If it's a voice note, whatever. Fuck it.
I can't tell you how many songs I have that have just came straight from the voicemail.
Yeah, you can drag them right in there.
Drag them right in, put a little telephone filter on it, hook.
There it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I when I think about the evolving artist and just like where the mind comes from, just
Yeah,
evolving dolls, I just feel like,
totally.
from where I started, from Reason,
Yeah,
to where I am now, like my mindset as an artist and as a creative
it's
has
changed.
completely changed, obviously due to the ability and what it can do, but just at the same time, the growth and the
Yeah.
knowledge too. Because, when I started with Reason, I didn't really know about VSTs
Hmm.
and like Nexus and
Yeah.
Silent and all those. And then I was,
Omnisphere.
yeah, and that's why I went to Cubase so I can use those. And
Yeah,
then I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, how do I bridge it together? Logic. So just that evolving
Hmm.
artist just changed the
It's
DAWs.
about staying open.
Yeah.
And like I feel the old head hater sneak into my brain occasionally, and like I'll see kids clipping to zero or doing something. I'm like, that's not how you do it. But then I learn it,
Right.
and I find something in there that works for me, and I'm like, yeah, that is kind of cool actually. Like I can kind of freak it that way, and that expands my brain, and that leads to inspiration. Where if you have that attitude of like, the kids don't know what the hell they're doing, I do it the right way, and that's the only way, the ideas will stop coming with that mindset.
Right.
You
And
know,
before you know it, that kid that you were hating on, they're playing at
he's
the
dunking
festival
on you.
and then just
Yeah.
straight, just, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh!
Dunking on you. And then you have to take a long look at yourself, you
Mm.
know? And kind of what the issue really is there.
I like that. Kind of take a look at yourself, right?
Yeah.
I know we talk about reflection a lot,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
With the artist mindset. My next question to you is, as far as self reflection, I listen to stuff that I'm currently making,
Yep.
but then from time to time, like I'll open up my laptop and I'll listen to some old beats,
Oh yeah.
or like my old production partner actually sent me a beat that we made like
Hmm.
8, 9 years ago,
Oh yeah.
and it was just like a self reflection. Do you ever go back and listen to music
Yes.
that you've listened to long ago for some reflection?
I have almost the exact same situation, honestly. My old production partner will send me demos I sent him 10 or 15 years ago. And I'm like, damn, I was sick. That's what I think. And it's funny because I've lost my total library multiple times off the laptop. I've lost everything production wise multiple times.
Like hard drive crash
Hard
or
drive
like just losing it?
crashes, like, projects, my sample library. It's happened multiple times.
Dang.
And every time I come out of the ashes like a phoenix, because I'm sick, my samples aren't sick.
Right.
And when I listen to a beat I made 15 years ago on Reason, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and it still bangs, I know deep down that like me as a human, I make sick shit, and it doesn't matter if you give me two toothpicks and a piece of Tupperware, or you give me an SSL, or you give me Ableton or whatever. What I have to say as a human and as an artist is dope,
Hmm.
and I believe that on a core level. And when I carry that into a session, that is creative fire.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. How long did it take you to get there?
The
To the
confidence?
Yeah, where you're at now to be able to say that, because a lot of people I feel like maybe who aren't comfortable that way
Yeah.
may seem it as a little bit like, I don't know, lack of better terms, arrogant, cocky, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's very powerful what you're saying,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I absolutely agree. So I just want to know, for everybody who isn't there,
Mhm.
how long did it take you to get to that point?
It took me a long time, and honestly, some days now I don't feel that way. It still sneaks in from time to time,
Hmm.
but it was years on the road, and that's what really did it for me. Is when my records started to pop. Is when I finally started to believe that I was sick. I definitely did not feel that way all the way up, and I still have moments of doubt and stuff now. But in those moments of reflection, when I look back at things I've made over decades, and there's so much fire from so many different eras with different DAWs, and that all sounds like me. Um, that gives me confidence. I can map the points and see their trajectory, and it's still going up. So
Yeah.
that I can ride that into a session, feel inspired, make something good, and then just rinse and repeat.
Yep, yep. I always say, like, if I'm getting nervous or I kind of get that little seed, I always say, like, I'm meant to be in this situation.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be having this opportunity if I wasn't qualified for
Yeah.
it. And so that's kind of my snap back into I'm dope.
Yeah.
And people or this client or this artist are asking for me because of my ability. So
Yeah.
why am I questioning?
You
my
wouldn't be
creativity?
here in this moment if you weren't supposed to be, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Chat, if you have any questions related to creativity, go ahead and drop them in. We're going to talk about one more thing before we wrap. Pete, have you ever just listened to a song, back to a song, and you just didn't know how to finish? This is kind of our writer's block
Yeah.
section
It
here.
happens to me a lot. And honestly, I have dozens and dozens and dozens. At a certain point, I realized that a percentage of what I make is sick, and a percentage of what I make is not, and that's okay.
It's so okay.
Yeah, the rest of it's kind of practice. And I don't know. Think about like a baseball player or something, batting 300, 3 out of 10's like insane,
Ain't that something?
right? And nobody bats 1,000. You know, you might compare yourself mentally to Skrillex or something like that. You might think, wow, every song he does is sick, but it's not. I've heard him.
Right.
He shows them. You can go watch that New York Times documentary where they interview him and Diplo and Justin Bieber about the Where Are You Now song.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays 25 versions of that song that weren't the one. They had the hook.
25
Yeah.
versions.
He keeps playing them over and over. We did this one, we did this one. And then he's like, after 15, he's like, well, and this is when we did this one thing where like we knew that was the vocal hook, but then we had to find the rest of it, you know?
Dang. The process.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild. But, you know, that kind of being able to realize that not everything you make is sick. And maybe some of the stuff you make is just practice, and being okay with that really opens you up to get to the next one, or not waste your time on something that you hate.
Yeah.
I always say Toucan Sam, like Fruit Loops. Follow your nose. If you don't want to work on that, you're not going to do good work on it.
Yeah.
Creatively.
Straight up.
Straight up.
And that's why when I have those moments too, I don't even save the project.
Yeah.
I'll have a whole
Throw that one
I'll have
back
a
in the
whole
pond.
Yeah, I'll just don't save, exit, don't save. But
Yeah.
hey, I created a chord loop today. I may
It's
have
not
created a
wasted
new
time.
patch. It wasn't a crazy time.
It's not wasted time. You gotta see some of your sessions like you're just in the sandbox. You're messing around,
The
you know.
sandbox.
The
that's what-
laboratory.
Yeah.
You're experimenting.
I'm away from the lab.
Yeah.
I'm the sandbox because I
Yeah.
like to have fun.
Yeah.
I like to have fun in there, and I
That-
like to
that
take my
energy is what
shoes off.
carries
And
over.
yeah, Frankie has a great question for creativity, Petey. I think you got this one. What are your thoughts on being creative, meanwhile still aligning with label sound?
It's difficult. It's difficult. And that's a lot where who you are as a person and putting yourself into your music carries out a lot. I get this a lot because I A&R at a label. I A&R for Nightbase, AC Slater's label. I listen to a lot of dance music, and a lot of it sounds exactly like artists that we have. You know, so I have to explain to people a lot. They're like, yo, this is really good, but it sounds just like Chris Lorenzo, and we have Chris Lorenzo.
Right.
So the one thing that always stands out to us as artists is artists that sound like themselves. Where within a couple seconds of that track, you're like, oh, this is a Drinks on Me track, or oh, this is a Clank track, just based off the way that they put so much of their own person into their song, and it's so uniquely them.
Right.
So I think that you should really just do you, and if you don't align with a label and they don't mess with you, then that's fine. That is straight up fine. You're probably meant to be somewhere else.
Yeah. You don't need a label to be successful or your music to resonate with people
No.
or to change somebody's life with music.
You need to be true to yourself. You need to be authentic to yourself. Other people can feel that. And you know, if you're out there putting yourself into your music and doing something unique and authentic, people will be attracted to that.
Boom!
Straight
There
up.
it is.
Straight up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're almost to the end of the Artist Mindset. Thank you so much for popping in. All of the questions have been absolutely fantastic. So everybody that's in the Zoom chat, we got a treat for you. Sample pack, okay?
Right.
Sample pack coming for you. Stick around to the end, all right? If you did not pop into the Zoom today, you will absolutely have another shot next week. We're doing this for the next 10 weeks. Okay,
Sheesh.
so yeah, this sample pack is insane. Hold on really quick. We have Bleep Bloop, we have Gigantor, Jilly, and Ryan Brown all contributing, all 4 Icon Collective instructors, all with like total different styles, we got vocals, we got drums, we got synth patches. You know, it's just a total diverse cast of instructors that have put together this incredible sample pack, and we are giving it to all of everybody who has popped into the Zoom link. So if you're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, come back next week, pop in the Zoom so you can get part of the goodie bags and you can get some of this, okay?
You might catch some inspiration.
Hey, you just might. And I guess we'll talk about writer's block, what it is, where it comes from, and how to break through it next week.
Next week.
Next week?
Getting down on the writer's block. It's such a big one. It's such a big one. It's the plague.
It is the plague. It's the mental block we all put on ourselves, but it's so easy. It's so easy to break out of it.
It's all in your head.
Start unknown, finish legendary, Icon Collective. Artist mindset, baby.
Yes, sir. I guess we'll see y'all next week. Sheesh, get at me, y'all. Send me the DMs. By the way, this is my song.
Don't leave me hanging. Don't leave me hanging.